first word that comes to mind is isolating.
I'll maybe listen into conversations to see what people are talking about and try to insert myself there. That way I can see, and if I feel like maybe the vibes are off or people are looking at me weird or I catch subtle little things, I'll be like, okay, we're in university, I'll probably never see you again, so bye-bye.
So I said I started off in computer science, and throughout my life I had already, after I moved out of Nigeria for a period of time, I had already been in very predominantly white institutes ever since moving to Europe, so I was always usually used to being one of the only Black people in my course and also one of the only minorities.
When I was younger, I felt it was a bit tough, a bit hard to be different. So I came to school and I see that all the people, they are a bit different. They eat different things for snacks, for breakfast, and then even like holidays, when we were talking in school, what we did during holiday. So everything was a bit different.
So like my peers that are not necessarily minorities either. First of all, to say talk about means the conversation has to be happening. And often there's not really a conversation. A lot of non-Black and non-POC people are always feeling touchy around that subject, especially in terms of a lot of internal guilt. So usually the first thing is to just ignore.
With classmates, sometimes they have this tendency to get carried away in an argument where you are actually talking about your experience, and it kind of becomes not a battle, that's a little bit overstating it, but it becomes like a trying to win a research argument kind of thing. Like, yes, sure, we can talk about it rationally and scientifically and we can discuss findings, but just because findings state something, that does not make my experience with something less valid. And I think that still needs to be acknowledged by a lot of people. I think that's where people who are even the most well-intentioned people, I think that's somewhere where they struggle.
It almost feels like the moment you start talking about race or diversity, you become the aggressor, or someone feels like, oh, you're pushing me out of the room, when all you want is more space in the room. And in reality, it's like, it's almost, it always feels daring to try and address it. It's hard to not feel like you become an aggressor, or you're the person that's trying to stop the music or trying to start something by having these conversations. So I say a lot of peers are actually very avoidant, and that's also because I feel like on a faculty level, there's also not that much interest.
And yeah, that also becomes this problem, I think, where you kind of don't want the good ones to feel bad. And I don't think that's the onus should be on us, like people from racial minorities or any marginalized groups for that matter, to have to, constantly care about, well, white people's feelings. I am sorry, just no. Sometimes you have to say it out loud and it's going to be an uncomfortable conversation.
So if I go to buy groceries or something, sometimes it's not that often, but sometimes some people, they just see me and they say something like ching chong, something like that. For me, it's nothing too much like such a big deal.
But yeah, I feel like I have experienced a lot of microaggressions, also macroaggressions, especially here. And it's funny because the more and more I begin to address them, and the more vocal I get, the more I actually begin to encounter. So it's not even just I think maybe sometimes it might be sad for me to say, oh, I miss when it was just microaggressions that I could ignore. But now I feel like the state that I'm in, all the micro filters into the macro.
Because the first thing is that you often have this hang-up, right, that if what you are feeling or if what you are experiencing is just an overreaction, is just that you are thinking in your head, or is it actually happening? So sometimes it's difficult to differentiate between something that someone's saying that's kind of condescending versus do you just feel it's condescending. But I would say even after a lot of observation and also seeing how people react to white friends being noisy in supposedly silent spaces versus me whispering in a silent space. and the kind of glares I would get. So I think that, of course, makes you uncomfortable, and you constantly have to wonder why that's happening. Even if you know, you don't want to know.
I feel like it's more to do with like ignorance and lack of information, because someone might say a little comment and I'll be like, okay, that's not right. For example, like I'm Cameroonian. Not everyone knows Cameroon and I'm aware of that. So sometimes I'll talk, when I say Cameroon, instead of asking me about where it is, people just assume it's in like Latin America, or it's in one of the like Dutch islands as well. So they'll just like talk and make comments around that, and then I'll have to be like, hey, I'm actually African. But this thing where people will disguise racism or like microaggressions as dark humor. And the thing is, when I kind of spot that or see the way some people are acting, I'm just kind of distance myself from it. I haven't been directly affected by it, but I've seen other people and I'm like, okay, better distance myself and avoid this sort of situation from happening in the future. So no microaggressions or anything.
So I had some comments of like, can you see well with your slanted eyes or something like that? And I would be really shocked, like, what are these comments?
When I talk about being a student and people ask me, what are you studying? Are you an MBOer? Are you an HBOer? And I'm like, no, I go to university. And that's a form of microaggression as well. And people are not even realizing that, because first of all, why are you filling in what I'm supposed to study? But second of all, why are you filling in all the education forms except from university? Like, do you have a certain view on me already without even knowing who I am? And it also comes down to, wow, you speak so well Dutch.
It's true that through COVID, my parents were really scared because there was a lot of news of like aggressions towards the Asian community, and they told me, yeah, be careful around you when you go to the public transport. But thankfully, I never had any interaction.
I think that microaggression is something that I will always face. The thing is with microaggression, it's so small that if you're not aware of that, you don't even know that you are applying that to somebody. And I think that's the downfall.
If there was a party or something, a gathering of people, then they would, ask me where I'm from. And I told them, like I'm the short version, my name is this, I'm from Spain. And then they would had an encounter with some guy that asked me like, no, but like, where are you actually from? And in my head I was, again, I'm gonna have the same situation, because I think, throughout my life I've always had this kind of situation. So I had to tell him the whole story. I was actually adopted from China and everything. And out of nowhere, he told me, I actually have a friend who is from Kazakhstan. Do you know him by any chance? Are you his sister? And I couldn't believe it.
The thing is to look at it as I have to do, for example, a bit extra, not to feel like a victim, I would say. So sometimes the things just are like that, and even if we can't change it, we can always just do more. We can work more or prepare more. So I would say, even if sometimes things are not fair, for me it's just to look at it and do more than others to just get things done. If we are talking about academic performances, I would say it gives me maybe more motivation, as I know where I come from, where my family comes from, and also I came here to study, so I just keep it in mind, and it gives me more motivation just to work and study a bit extra.
Being in academia means that you are moving in different spaces. Your surroundings are different, usually more white. Like, the higher you come, the whiter it gets, right? They say that. And being in spaces like that means that you are not only representing you, but also somebody else, because if you make a good appearance, that means that you open up the door for another, and another, and another. But mistakes feel heavier for you because you realize that you have that double conscience, right?
Because I literally remember a point where I couldn't come to campus based on literally being the only Black woman in computer science. And being surrounded by a lot of anti-blackness and a lot of ignorance.
I understand that I'm doing a course at a Dutch university, but when we are talking about social psychology, I think there's, like, at least for my specific course, I always thought that it was still quite white-centric in its research. Even when talking about research specifically surrounding racial minorities, it was still white-centric. It was still like a white savior perspective in research.
I feel like it's normal that a teacher is going to remember your face if you're like the single person who has another ethnical background, but don't make it noticeable. Like, I remember, I don't know, if I would talk in class a little bit, yeah, I would literally get like some warnings from the teachers, like more warnings than my other white mates and peers. And that would make me feel a little bit like insecure and powerless into thinking, yeah, like that the teacher is gonna literally remind me for this specific, experience on that single day. So I need to like work even more to get, the approval and, regain the confidence of that person.
When it comes to racial topics, the burden truly is on the minorities when it really shouldn't be. Because I'm sorry, let's say I'm in a class surrounded by like white people. If the teacher's talking about like a sort of sensitive topic like slavery or something, I feel so much pressure.
So yeah, like you constantly have to bring your own perspective forward, and you constantly have to be like, yeah, okay, sure, this makes sense for you. This does not make sense to me. This is not how it works for us. And I had professors who were really willing to have those conversations and acknowledge that even with the vast academic research that is being carried out, there's still a lot of gaps that need to be filled. But then I also had professors who just dismiss you, who don't want to talk about it, who are stuck with their own perspectives and are not willing to understand that there are other perspectives out there, and just engaging with them just makes your knowledge pool richer. Like, sure, it's benefiting me, but it's also benefiting you.
Like, I've gone through a lot, and all those things obviously have affected my well-being in many, many ways, considering I'm also a Nigerian student, international, and it's like, with most African parents, you're here to study, you're on a mission, like school is your priority. Yet when school is the one thing that is actually bringing you down, it was very conflicting. Like,
I think mostly I am in general an anxious person, so this constant anxiety of, there's like this burden that you carry sometimes where anything that you do might feed into like larger stereotypes about your race or about your country or whatever. So you are constantly sometimes walking on eggshells, and I think I do that a lot. Like, I am quieter in spaces than I would normally be. How I talk to friends when I'm in public spaces, what kind of things I do. At some point, even what kind of clothes I wear. So yeah, it definitely feeds into your everyday life a lot, where you are constantly trying to balance being a person, but also, balance not making the image of your race or community even more negative.
I think physically wise, since I was little, I would say that I would compare myself a lot to my white girlfriends, and I would literally ask my parents, like, do I really look Chinese or Asian from the outside? I think I really wanted to have this white physical appearance, like standard. And with age also, like, while going to parties or anything, I think I would see that, I don't know, like maybe guys in general are more attracted to like my white friends than me, and I would feel insecure and try to ask myself like, what's wrong with it, like what can I do to like fix that. But I think at the moment it's just like acceptance and just honestly, if they're not attracted to me, I don't care. I'm not attracted to them either.
I feel like because I'm surrounded by people who don't just see me as a racial minority or who don't make comments and say things that like are microaggressions, I would say that it's really good for my mental health, because knowing I'm surrounded with people who care about me and consider me as an equal, that already makes me feel 10 times better. And also knowing that I don't have to overthink what I say or can't say certain things because maybe they won't understand. It also gives me this sense of freedom that I can truly be myself. And being around these kinds of people and having this sort of positive atmosphere surrounding my race and my identity, I feel like it just encourages me to want to learn more about other people and not be closed off, and it makes it so much easier for me to speak to people freely and openly, because I do know it is a little intimidating being the only racial minority person in the room. You sometimes have this little pressure that you put on yourself. You're like, okay, I need to work 10 times harder to be just as good. But because I've been shown time and time again that I don't really need to feel a sense of competition or anything, I feel very much happy and I don't really have any negative feelings. Or if I do, I'll be like, okay, where is this coming from? Is it to do with me or the way someone's making me feel? And then I approach it in that way.
You can't have diversity and not account for the changes that come with diversity. Secondly, you can't imagine diversity when it is not there.
I think the biggest thing would be to allow there should be space for people to have those conversations first of all. When someone, one of your friends is talking about their experiences, and if it does not align with what you have heard from your other peers or what you have read on the internet, shut up for a second and listen. Maybe it's different. It's a person. They are allowed to have an individual experience. I think that's really important, that really should engage with those conversations better. Talk to your friends about how you can support them, what kind of insecurities or fears they are carrying every day.
A very big part of, I think, pro-Blackness and decolonization now is mutual aid. Other forms of transaction that are not monetary, that hold different forms of value, from friendship to just basic communal languages of giving and receiving, or even often giving without expecting anything in return. You don't always have to benefit from someone. The minority in the classroom doesn't have to be your best friend to be respected. You don't have to like them for them to be respected. There's so many ways to go, there's so many ways to start within and beyond the classroom. But I feel like the classrooms are mainly important to these sort of discussions of what can you do, because they are sites for learning, sites for synthesis and actual transformation. And if we can begin to actually acknowledge and understand what a safe space actually means and how to contribute to that safe space, then this knowledge can be reciprocated and replicated outside of the classrooms, turning into a whole environment.
In academic spaces specifically, I think representation is still quite lacking, because even if we have professors from racial minorities or professors from other spaces, professors from marginalized groups, I don't think it's really that many. I think it's barely a sliver there. And even research that's being carried out about other parts of the world are often being carried out by white people. And yeah, I think academia is a little too whitewashed. So even if you think you understand something, you don't. And I think you need to be constantly reminding people of that. That yes, just because you have read about it and you have done your research and you have spoken to people, it does not mean you have lived it.
A lot of people are more afraid of coming off as racist or appearing as racist than they do care about being racist themselves, which is why I feel like whenever you have conversations surrounding race, people will keep quiet because they're scared to say something or say something wrong. But I feel like we need people to speak up or say comments so we can learn and also educate ourselves, because something we've all learned in school is that you learn more from your mistakes than you do from not making them. So by encouraging these conversations, for example, in class discussions or as icebreakers, I feel like that's a really good way to start the conversation.
Fluidity is the site for transformation, and fluid means you're open to changes. You're open to both learning and unlearning, because there's a lot of things that even within minorities, like we're dealing with, that we have to unlearn, projecting onto other minorities, things like that.
And then number 2, I'd say it's to do with educating yourself, because I feel like a lot of microaggressions or problems people do face, it's not necessarily from racism or hatred toward a minority group, it's more to do with a lack of information, which stems from ignorance because they don't face that often, so they're like, ugh, I don't really care about it. So by informing yourself where possible, let's say you meet someone, like you're thinking of making a comment or something like that, think before you say something, and also do your research, because the internet is free. You have Siri at your hands, you have Alexa, whatever, so use it.
Better classrooms equals better worlds. Better facilitators of education means better state of the world, better state of our society. So yeah, so many sources online, so many people you can talk to, but also don't overstep. Don't overstep, because sometimes guilt is not a good thing to be fueling your actions. You often have a lot of guilty white people that are entering certain space, not knowing how much they're actually taking up rather than making space for. So that's also an important factor. But yeah, there's so many sources. Like, it doesn't take me, the minority, to teach you, you know? It takes like so much more.
Think before you speak and think, okay, if someone asked me this question, would I feel offended? If someone asked me to touch my hair, how would I feel? That would solve a lot of issues.
I think it comes down to, are you truly listening to understand? Or are you listening because you want to give a counter argument? That makes a total difference.
My key word there is fluid. For it to be a fluid site where things could change, things could unchange. That way we're always constantly adapting, because nothing ever stays the same, and that means the conversation is continuously flowing as well. So the conversation doesn't just end after one. It just keeps going, and the leaders of those conversations keep changing.